Hello and welcome to this Library Advanced Search Skills for Clinical Psychology. My name's Emma and I'm the Liaison Librarian for Psychology Support. In this session we're going to look at getting the most out of library search tips and tricks, finding material to help you support the critiquing of clinical literature for your research area. We'll also cover things like locating other sources and also using reference management tools. So to start off with, why is it important to use a library? Now, it's common practice for everybody to use various different search engines to find out information daily. And there is a lot of good information out there. The only problem being is that the results that you find are not always reliable, so you will have to do some sort of judgment checking on terms of who's written the resources, are they credible, is the information accurate, all of that type of thing. Whereas if you use resources that have been hand-picked by the divisions and the library, all the content there will be academic and relevant for you to use in your studies. You will obviously still have to review and make a judgment on whether the content within that academic content is relevant to the points that you want to make or the research that you're doing, and also in terms of where that research is coming from. Is it global? Is it Eurocentric? All of those types of things. But in terms of the actual academic credibility, that will be guaranteed. The other really good reason to use them is that there's lots of research that proves that students that use library resources will get better results. And this is because it will improve the quality of your references that you'll be assessed upon, and also it will lead you to other research within that field. So you'll discover other key authors or people that are developing content in that area, other articles, other ideas and themes that will be much harder to locate from just doing some simple internet searches. So before you start to actually carry out any searches, it's really important to have some sort of search strategy in mind, and there are lots of different ones out there. This one is a nice simple linear sort of 5-step process that you can just use to keep you on track. So number one, identifying and developing keywords. Keywords or search concepts or terms that you want to use will be really, really important on your search journey. The quality of the keywords that you have will determine the quality of the resources that you get back from your searches. So it's really important to spend a little bit of time at the beginning of the process just kind of making a note of what are the key sort of concepts and terms in your research question that you're trying to find out about. Are there any alternative terms? Are there any related areas that might be useful to sort of include within that? And try and be as broad as possible as you can there. Once you're fairly happy with those, then it's a case of choosing the right tool for the job. So it's a bit like doing DIY. You need to make sure you've got the right tool to carry out what you need to do. So we have access to lots of different databases for you, but those databases will contain different types of information. So for example, you might use one source if you're looking for sort of academic journal content. You might use another one if you're looking for more statistics. You might use another one if you're looking for sort of clinical trial studies. So you need to know the difference between those resources and which one you can expect to get which from. So once you've done some sort of initial discovery of those, and I'll go on to show you some of the key ones that you can have a look at as part of this session, it's then a case of doing the action part, so carrying out your searches. And this is where you come back to your keywords and you can play around with different combinations, combining them using different search techniques and criteria to make the search a bit smarter and make it a bit more successful for you. And again, I'll share with you some different techniques that you can use to combine those keywords together. Once you've got your initial search results back, you might then find you want to refine them a bit further. So you might want to put some other sort of parameters on your search depending on what sort of lens you're looking at your search options through. So you might want to look at more recent research, so you might want to have some sort of like date filter on there. You might want to look at location, it might be demographics. There's a whole range of different things that you can then go on to refine those initial results. And then finally, step 5, make sure that you record or document any information that you find that is going to be useful and that's going to inform your research. It's really, really easy to forget where you found a particular article or a particular study after the fact. So if you don't make a note of it, it might be quite difficult to then retrieve it again. So make sure that you save any information, and you can do that using reference management tools, which we'll talk about as part of this session. So just a few top tips then in terms of building successful searches and picking up some of those earlier points. Identify your keywords or your concepts, think of synonyms or alternative terms, and also narrower or broader terms. So for example, if I was going to do a search for some studies based in Britain, I might also want to include terms for British, UK and United Kingdom, just to pick up all the different ways that that could be described as within the literature. Consider your limits. So we spoke about location, dates, demographic, and there might be others that you want to consider as well. Like country of origin, that type of thing as well. It might be case studies. It could be all sorts of things that you want to think about. And another really good tip is if you're starting out and you want to get a much better overview of any contextual information around your area of study, you can use reference sources for background information, and it helps you to identify any sort of key authors or important figures or themes, or even any milestones that might be good to be aware of and that might inform some of your search techniques as well. So coming back to the keywords and thinking about keywords, we're just going to give a quick example here of how you can broaden out your keywords to consider other sorts of things that you might want to have a look at when you're carrying out your searches. So say for example we've got the sort of area of age stereotypes that we want to do some research around. We can then start to have a think about other search terms that we might want to include. So we could, for example, have age discrimination as one type of stereotype. We could have ageism, we could have attitudes, we could have stereotyped attitudes, we could have gerontology, we could have intergenerational relations, and we could have aging. So you see, initially from that first sort of area of age stereotypes, I've managed then to drill down and find some other keywords or concepts or related terms that might be also useful to search for as well. So just thinking about that a little bit broader gives you more sort of scope to sort of develop your search as you go along, so that you don't come to sort of a dead end too quickly if you've got sort of very narrow sort of search terms that you're looking at. Now with the search terms, on the different stages there, we talked about combining your search sort of keywords together, and there are different library tools that you can use to do that. So the first set of tools are or, and not, and they are different connectors to pull your keywords together, either to make the search more narrower, or you might want to broaden out your search, or you may want to exclude certain aspects from your search. So the first one, or, tends to broaden the search, and usually you kind of use it if you're looking for alternative terms. So in the example there, if you're doing a search for hat and you put or in between and then crown, it will search for results which have hat in it, results that have crown in, and then results that have both in there. So it will broaden out your search and you'll get quite a few back for that type of search. The second one, and, so what that tends to do is to narrow down the search and make sure that your search combines two different aspects within the same set of results. So if I did a search for dress and ribbons, it would mean that all the results that came back would be talking about dress and ribbons in the same result, and not sort of either or as in the example before. And then the last one, not, is there for narrowing down your search in terms of different terms that you might want to exclude. So for example, if I was doing a search for trousers, if I just did a search for trousers, I might bring back other sorts of items of clothing that you wear on your legs, and I might not be interested in shorts. So what I could do is put in trousers, not shorts, and that will just cut that aspect of the search results out and make it a little bit more relevant. One caveat with not is that remember that does exclude different terms, so just make sure you know that you definitely want to exclude that before you use that in your search. A couple of other things that you can do. So the first one is if you're searching for different endings of the word, so that's called a truncation search. So you take the first main part of your search. So in this example here we've got research, and then you can just put, it's usually an asterisk, sometimes a star at the end of the main stem of the word, and then what that will do is it will search for all of the different endings of that word at the same time. So it will search for researchers, researching, researcher, and it's a much quicker way of, rather than entering each of those separately, to search for. The second one is phrase searching. So you can use this if you need sets of words to come back next to each other within your search results, and you just use quotation marks at the beginning and the end of the phrase or the words that you need to come back next to each other. So for example, if I carried out a search for graduate outcomes with the quotation marks, it would just ensure that all the results come back talking about graduate outcomes as a phrase rather than graduate and then several sentences down talking about their outcomes. So it just helps again to make it a little bit more specific to your search. We'll go on in a few moments to actually demo some of those techniques out in some of the different databases that will be relevant for clinical psychology, but just sort of keep them in mind for now. The next stage we talked about was keeping records of your sources. So it's really important to record and annotate any of your searches that you're carrying out, and you can do that manually. Obviously you can kind of have a table where you kind of record all the information that you found out, but also at Kent we have a good range of different reference management tools that you can use, which will help you not only to keep all your references together, but also help you when you're ready to do the actual reference management side of things as well, in terms of creating bibliographies in a particular referencing style and also doing things like in-text citation. So the link here just takes you to the University of Kent's Reference Management Tools webpage, and it outlines the key ones that we have information about. Okay, here. So another way to think about these reference management tools, so you can see we've got three that we recommend here. The one that I'm going to focus on today is Mendeley. Mendeley, you're going to get information from open source places. It's free to use, so you might be using also use it Scholar. You might finish at the university databases. So it's really useful from that pages. You might also already have different documents that you've downloaded already that you found that you might want to use and you might want to reference in your final work. So the reference management tool will allow you to send all of these various bits of information into one place, which you can then draw on when you come to do your referencing, you know, creating your bibliography and doing your in-text citations. And as we kind of work through and do some different demos of the different databases that you're going to be using, I will kind of show you how you can export the information into Mendeley. The first starting point is that we need to create accounts for Mendeley. So I'm going to go on now and show you how you do that. Okay, so the first step is to go to mendeley.com. Once there, you then need to set up an online account. To do that, you just go up the top there and you can click on sign in. Then you'll have the option to log in. Now we recommend that when you sign in that you don't use your university email address for that. You use a personal one. The reason for that being is that when you leave the university you can then take all of your references with you without the hassle of having to change email addresses or any of that. Once you've created a sign-in, you can then use the same login details to download the desktop reference of Mendeley and then log in. So you have the two to sync. So you have the desktop version where you'll always have all of your reference regardless of whether you have internet access, and then you'll have the web version as well, so that you can use either or depending on which machine that you're working on. You just need to sync the two together, which we will have a look at as we go through. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly sign in here to my accounts. Okay, and then I should have version here. So once you've signed into your account here, you've then got the option to search for different articles that you want to add to your library, but then also you've got the option to download the actual reference management system. Okay, so I'm just going to call up my Mendeley desktop now, as I've downloaded that previously. Okay. Okay, so you can see here that this is my Mendeley desktop version, and you can see that I've already got some references within the actual table here. So the first thing that we would generally recommend that you do is just to go ahead and set up some folders so you've got some spaces to actually direct the resources that you find into, and it's really simple to do that. So at the top here you can see I've got a little folders icon thing. Just by clicking on folders I can create a folder and I can give it a name. So I can put in there clin, let's put psych for this, and then I've set up my folder ready to send any information that I want to within that clinical psychology folder. Now within Mendeley there are different ways of getting your resources in there. So you can search directly from Mendeley as we saw previously in the web version, but you can also export from different databases within Mendeley. So we'll come back to this as we do carry out some searches into some of the different databases, and I'll show you actually how you get those within there. I mentioned before about syncing between your web version and your desktop version. So at the top there you can see you've got a little sync tool. So every time you've added something via the web version, when you go into your desktop version, just make sure that you carry out the little sync, just so that it actually kind of syncs the two together and adds any recent ones into the desktop that you may have added when you were just using the web version. There are lots of other really useful things within here as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we kind of go through the process. Okay, so let's go back to actually finding some of the sources that we can then export and send into Mendeley and actually carry out some of those search techniques that we were talking about a bit earlier on. So we're going to start off just by having a look at library search for finding sources. So we can use library search to look for things like books, either physical books or electronic books within there. And we can also use it to search for online journal articles as well. Library search is a good starting point, but I should say that it's only a starting point. So we're going to start off by doing some searches in library search, but then we're going to move quite quickly into some of the academic databases for psychology that you can use as well. And there's a couple of those that we're going to try out some searches in and send some stuff from there from Mendeley too. Just a caveat with using library search in Mendeley, any of the search results that you find directly within library search, there's not a way to send them from the library search interface itself into Mendeley. You do need to go into the actual database that library search is pulling that article from example. So again, we'll look at that when we go into the different databases for psychology, and you can see how that works. Okay, so once you're in library search, you can carry out some searches, and library search does cover a lot of content. So it covers things like books, journal articles, conference proceedings. It may have things like reviews in there. So the information is quite broad. So it's quite important to think about your keywords when you're searching within library search to make sure you can make it as relevant as possible to what you're looking for. So let's just carry out a couple of different example searches. So the first one, we're going to do a search on mental health. And we can put the connectors within here. So let's try and then let's put in there well-being. So we can carry out an initial search on that and see what sorts of results that we get back as a first sort of attempt. So you can see there that it will highlight your keywords, and we've got all of the key content coming there back in the center of the screen. Now the filters on this side relate to whether it's a physical item or a book type item. So if you're looking for ebooks or you're looking for books, these are the columns that you need to use on this side here. So if I were to click on ebooks, for example, that will show me all of the electronic books that are available based on my keywords in that area that I can then go on to link to and search within a little bit further if I wanted to. Now the filters on the other side relate to generally electronic resources, and they will be things like journal articles. There may be magazine content there may be conference proceedings, dissertations that have been digitized, that sort of content. So the books will be at a more sort of general level, and if you're looking for more detailed or specific information, it's much better to use the filters on this side for the electronic content within there. Okay, so I'm going to just do a slightly different search just to demonstrate how we can check for the articles. Again, on the same sort of theme. So this time we're going to do a search for, let's go back here and do meditation and mental health. Okay, so slightly more specific than the search before, and you can see there that I've used the phrase searching, the quotation marks around mental health, because I want those two keywords to come back next to each other. And then I'll run the search again, and then you'll see I'll get some results back. So because I'm mainly interested in looking for articles, what I want to do is to use the filters on this side. So I might first of all want to click on the peer reviewed, and peer reviewed basically means that the articles have been reviewed by other experts in the field before they've been published within the different journals. I might also want to go down there and think about the date range, because at the moment it could be going back quite a long way. So if I put in there 2017 to 2021 and then click on include, that will update those results so that they're much more recent for me. If I want to think about different types of keywords, so you know early on we talked about trying to be quite broad about how we think about the keywords and thinking about lots of different alternative terms that we might want to consider as well. Library search will help you to do this. So from that initial search I can take a look at the different subjects that have come back from within that range, and I can see there's things in there such as well-being that we had a look at earlier on. There's also things like mindfulness within there, there's things like anxiety, there's stress, and then there's different types of treatments for those types of mental health conditions. So there are different things there that will give me a lot of extra terms that I could include, and it will influence the sorts of nature of the results that I get back from within here as well. Okay, so let's try some of that now. So if we go back to our meditation, and then let's put an or in so that we can look for an alternative term, and then let's put in mindfulness, and again with mental health, and we can run that search again. And you can see that that's then updated the search results, so we've got mindfulness within here. As well as looking at the keywords within that way, the other really useful thing you can do is if you find one that looks interesting, so let's say for example this one, mindfulness meditation in the classroom, if I click on the actual title I should get a bit more of an abstract, so it gives me an idea of what it's actually talking about, but it will also include the subject terms for that particular article. So I might want to have a quick look at that and see, is there anything within there that I hadn't thought of that would be really useful to include in my search. So I might say I also want to think about it in relation to and students within there, and then we can run the search again, and again it will then give it that much more relevancy to what I'm looking for. So lots of different techniques that you can try out when you're running the search to make it a little bit more effective for you within there. And then in terms of accessing any of these resources, it's just a case of clicking on the view online, and that will take you through to the actual journal articles that you can then have a read through and kind of research a little bit further to see how useful it's going to be for your research within there. Okay, at this stage I'm not going to show you how to use Mendeley, because we'll look at that when we actually go into the subject databases, because remember there isn't a direct way to export them from Mendeley within this interface, although obviously using the other library databases there will be. Okay, so we're now going to go on and look at some of the specific databases that will be useful for clinical psychology. The first one we'll have a look at is psych articles, and we've also got CINAHL and Cochrane, which are more useful for the clinical studies side of things within there. So we'll carry out some searches. After that, we'll have a look at Google Scholar as well as another source for finding out information within, and I'll show you some different sort of search techniques within there too that you can try out. Okay, so to access the resources that we are going to look at for clinical psychology, there is a link here to the digital resources directory that you can access them all from and check them from. The other place to be aware of is the subject guide. So within the subject guide, you'll find a link in there for psychology, and that will then show you what are the key resources for psychology. It will give you my contact details, how to book an appointment, and lots of other information within there that you might need to use in terms of the library side of things. So let's take a look at the digital resources directory. So within here you can either look up a specific resource such as psych articles. You can also just type in psychology and it will then start to bring up a list of everything that will be relevant for psychology within there for you to have a look at. So we're going to now go into the psych articles option. So I'm just going to go back here and put within here there, and then we can see APA psych articles. Okay, there's also PsycInfo, which is also a really useful database. PsycInfo is a little bit broader than just articles, so it will have other sorts of information in there as well. It may have some book content, it may have some broader sorts of conference papers and things, but for now we're just going to have a look at the psych articles resource. Okay, and then we can just click on access this resource. Okay, so we can see here from this database we go straight into what we call an advanced search, and that means that you've got different boxes to combine your different keywords within. You can also see you've got the connectors there, so if I just click on there I can see also I've got or not to select from, so we can now try out some of those different combinations of combining our search terms together. Okay, so I'm going to do a search for stereotype threats. So let's put in and you'll see as you start to type in, it looks for matches within the database, and sometimes that can be a really useful way of finding alternative terms. But I'm going to go for stereotype threat for this example, and then I want to combine it with offenders. So I can put in offend, for example, and then I could put in my asterisk or star to look for the different endings of that, such as offending, offenders, offend, and different sorts of related terms within there. So we can now run the search. Now at this stage I would generally start to run the search, but what you can do is if you find you're getting back results that are not as relevant as they could be, you can then go back and you can change here. So at the moment I haven't selected a field, which means it will search for those keywords across absolutely everything, which sometimes is good if you've got a more niche area of research, because it will at least pick up where those references are. But sometimes, you know, obviously where they pick them up from, it might not be within the full kind of content, it might be in a reference or something, so it may not be as relevant, the particular article. So if you find that, you can go back and change this, and I would suggest you change it to something like the abstract, because if the keywords are in the abstract, then that's a summary of what the article is actually about. But we'll just keep it like this for now, and we will just run our search. Okay, and then you'll get back your results within here. So at the moment I've only got 2 results back. You know, they might be good results, and I might have lots of information in there that I want to have a look at. So for example, I might want to look at the list of references at the end of each of those articles to find you know, who else they used to carry out that research, and there might be some other things that I can access from there. I can also have a look at the subjects, so the subjects that each of those authors have indexed within their particular articles or their particular work. In the same way that we looked at subjects in library search, that can be a way to crowdsource your keywords and broaden that out slightly. So again, you can do that. But if I feel like I want to get more results back, I might want to go back to my search again. So I might want to take my asterisks out there, and then I might want to broaden that out. So I might want to say offenders or criminals or prisoner. So I can click within there, and then we can run that search again. And you can see now that's given me 5 results, so I've got a few extra results to come back just by sort of broadening out that terms, just to give you more things that you might want to think about from within there. The other thing we might want to do, if you feel like that's still not enough results for what you need, you might want to go back to your initial stereotype, and you might put stereotype threat, or you might, or stereotype intervention. So again, that could be another way of broadening out that search. And then if we take it right back to stereotypes or prejudice or generalization or discrimination, we can see now we've upped it to 319. So just by playing around with some of those combinations of keywords and broadening it out to consider alternative terms, you can see how you can then sort of broaden the amount of resources you're getting back. You can then put on the various different limits that you might want to. So you might want to scroll down, you might want to say, so at the moment this is going back from 1925, so you might want to go up a little bit further. Let's go say 2002, so we're looking at more recent, and you could be even more recent than that, and that will cut down my results to 211 as well. I can look at, again, peer-reviewed journals as we did before in library search. I can consider things like gender, if I'm looking at gender, or age ranges, so sort of different demographics, or I can look at things such as the methodology used. If there's any studies within here that I might want to pick up on, I can look at that. I can also look at things like tests and measures as well within here that might be useful. And again, you've got your population content within there as well to have a little look at if that's relevant to what you want to research. So lots of additional ways that you can then add, you know, your kind of your different sorts of lens on what it is you want to research about that particular topic area. Okay, once you've done that search, some other things that you might want to do in terms of, for example, sending things into Mendeley as a starting point. So you might notice at the end of each of the references there's a little folder with a plus icon on it. So if I was to click the top two here, what that does is it adds it into my folder. So my folder now, you can see it's got some things within it. So if I click onto that, and then I just need to select all of those, and then I want to click on the export option. And then to send it into Mendeley, you want the top one, direct the export in a research information system file, basically. So it works with all of these reference management systems. And then it's just simply a case of clicking on save. And then what that will do is it will save that RS file into your downloads folder, which we can then upload within to Mendeley. Okay. So we'll have a little look at that in a few moments. The other thing that I just wanted to point out that's really useful within these different types of databases as well, so if we just go back, is once you've run a search and it's working quite effectively for you and you're getting back things that seem relevant to what you need to research, you might want to actually set up a search alert. So what that does is it will email you every time a new reference gets added based on your search criteria. So to do that, once you've run the search, you click on the search history link, and then from there you choose which area of the search you want to save. So if I was to select that one, and then I click on the option that says save searches and alerts. At that stage, what it should do is to prompt you to either log in if you have a Gmail account or create an account with an email address to actually set up those preferences. So all you need to do is to do that, and then once you've done that, you will have the option. So I'm just going to continue with Google. And select the appropriate one. And then it's probably just going to ask me to authorize it. Okay, and then once you've linked in there, you can then give the search alert a name. Make sure you select the alert option, and then how frequently you want to receive the alert. So probably once a week would be fine. Put in the email address that you want to receive it to, and then save it. Okay, and then you would automatically get an email every time some new resources have been added based on your search strategy. So that's really worth doing. Okay, so that's just a quick example of looking at psych articles to do some searches, and we're going to go on now and look at a couple of different databases as well. Before we do that, I'm just going to show you within Mendeley how you can then upload those references that we've just found within within your Mendeley option. So we'll go back into our Mendeley desktop here. And then from our desktop, what we can do is if we go to the file option, and then what we want to do is to click on the option that says add files. And what it will ask you to do is to say, well, where do you want to upload your file from? So remember, when you download the RIS files, they usually go into your downloads folder unless you've indicated for it to go somewhere else, and it will be the most recent one. So I can see there it's the RIS file there that we did just a few moments ago, and then I can just open that up, and you can see there it's added in those two references, and I'm already in my clinical psychology folder, so it's just added them into the clinical psychology folder for me. As simple as that. Okay. Okay, so the next database we're going to look at doing this with is CINAHL. So you can see it looks exactly the same, except at the top here it says CINAHL. So it's within the same EBSCO platform. So just a little tip, if you want to do some cross sort of searches across databases within EBSCO, if you click on the Choose Databases option, you can see there that you've got CINAHL within there, and you've also got things like, you know, APA psych articles and APA psych info. So you can select more than one and then search across all of them at the same time if you want to. But for this example, I want to carry out a slightly different search, so I'm just going to do it independently. Okay, so within CINAHL there's some really useful things that we can have a look at. So we've got some subject headings within here. So if you're interested in finding out what are the subject headings for particular terms that you might want to look for. So for example, if we were to put in here exercise, and we could put term begins with, and then we can browse. And you can see it gives you the different terms for exercise and related, and they're all linked through. So you can see different sorts of terminology that is indexed within the database and that you might want to have a look at within there and use. So that's quite a useful little check just to do if you want to find out what sorts of other terms might be indexed within the database under particular sort of more sorts of medical headings. Okay, let's just go back to the search. So again, we should be in our advanced search. So exactly the same principles apply as before in terms of separating out your keywords using the and, or, and even the not, and thinking about selecting the field that you might want to search for those terms within if relevancy is a particular issue. And for this one, we're just going to do a quick search for placebo effect. And you can see you could conclude psychology within that to pick up the psychology, and then we're going to look at it with physical activity within there, and we're going to run a quick search and see the results that we get back for this one. Okay, so we've got 108 this time coming back, and again exactly the same things apply as before. We can select academic journals if we want to. We can scroll bar so it's a little bit more up to date, so we're looking at things that are more recent. We can look at again certain demographics. They're obviously different to the ones we saw in psych articles, so not as expansive, but still you can look at things geographically in terms of what part of the world the research is coming from. You can look at gender, you can look at age, and you can also look at your subject headings within here as well, things that have kind of been indexed as part of all of the search results that have come back from that initial search. Again, if we wanted to broaden it out, we could go back to this one and we could say, okay, we might be looking for physical activity. We might also be looking for exercise, and you can see there we've also got physical activity, fitness. So we might want to put in there exercise or fitness again, and then run that search again. And you can see that's really increased the results now up to 167,000 within there. So again, you might want to have a look at your limiters if you want to sort of like make sure that's a bit more relevant to you. You might want to add something else in there. So we could put in psychology within here and run the search again. So you're looking at it from that aspect. And then again, you can also look at the subjects that have been included within the subject lines in terms of crowdsourcing further keywords that you might want to include within those results within there. In terms of accessing full text, it'll either be a case of having an actual PDF within there, but also you might have this full text finder. So if you were to click on there, that should then give you the link through to whichever other database that it might be held within. and should give you the relevant links to click through. You might find this with some of the databases, so there is a lot of full text access, but they're not all within the same database. Sometimes it's linking out, like in this case, some of them are either in Science Direct or one of the JISC websites that you can access as well. Okay, from within there. Now, we would follow exactly the same process as before in terms of adding stuff to your Mendeley account. It would just be simply a case of adding them here and then clicking on your folder at the top and then exporting it as that RSI file and then uploading it from Mendeley from your downloads folder. Exactly the same process. The same with setting up the search alerts. You know, you go into your search history and then you click on the search alerts link and then you can set up a search alert for that search as well. So really good practice to get into the habit of doing that really effectively. Again, if we felt that some of the resources that were coming back were not as relevant as they could be, we can select a field. So for example, if I went back to this one and said I want to look for it within the abstract, and then we can run the search again for that. And we can see if that changes the nature of our results. We might want to do it for all three sets of the keywords if we feel it hasn't refined the search down further enough for us. So let's see if that makes a difference. Okay, so that's cut it down slightly to 92,000. So different ways that you can then sort of explore and refine it further to get it to a nice manageable list of resources that you'll be able to have a look through. Okay, so that's CINAHL. The next one we're going to have a look at now is the resource, the Cochrane Library, which is one where you'll have a little bit more access to some of that clinical studies. You will get some clinical studies through CINAHL and also some through psych articles as well, but you'll need to use those additional filters to identify those, or perhaps even if you add in another search here at the top, and we could put in within here for example, you could have clinical practice guidelines, you could have whatever the information is that you need. We could put in clinical study or trial. Let's just take that back. And then we can run the search again. And that will be another way of getting to those clinical trials as well. So, but you need to include those in the search terms, where, as you'll see with Cochrane in a few moments, there actually are particular sorts of tabs that you can access that information in separately. So we'll look at Cochrane Library now, and this has lots of information such as we talked about clinical answers, clinical trials, a lot more focused around those sorts of areas that will be useful for you to sort of get information about and use it to support some of the research that you'll be doing. So with the Cochrane Library, it goes, you have a search along the top here, but we'd really want to put it into our advanced search so that we get that combination of boxes and our different connectors that we can use and try out. So if I click on advanced search, this should then give us the advanced search page with the different boxes that we can fill out, and you can see here that I've already prepared a search. So it's very similar to the search that we've just looked at, except this time we're going to combine the placebo effect with physical exercise or physical activity and mood this time. So we've given a slightly different term to it within here. Okay, and then you've got the option to actually run your search and see what results you get back. So let's click on that now. Okay, and then you'll get your search results back. So what you'll notice, which is slightly different to when we were looking at the two EBSCO databases, the CINAHL and the psych articles, is that it separates out all of our information into different sections. So it'll either be things like reviews, and then you can see everything else has come under trials as the two kind of main areas for this search that we've carried out, but you can see that there are other sorts of tabs that the information may kind of come back depending on the format and the content within those. So from those initial searches, you've got the options to look at dates. So again, if you want to look at something within the last year or the last 2 years, you can make that really current if you want to, or you can put in your own custom range of dates. You can look at things like language, you can look at things like interventions. You can also see the topics that are coming up back there as part of that search, and you can expand that list further, and you can click into those to see what those topics might be, and do that further as well. Within each of the results here, you've got the option to click on the show the preview, so it gives you information about the abstract, give you a bit more information about what the actual review is focused on. You've also got the thing called show picos. So what this does is it's another way of carrying out your search. So at the beginning, I don't know if you remember, but I talked about there's lots of different search strategies that you can use, and PICO is another really useful one. So it's based on population, the intervention, the comparison, and then the outcome. So that's how you separate out your search terms. So in this case, the person has thought about the population they're doing the study for, so it's things like, you know, adults, children, depression, and then the intervention they're talking about is exercise therapy. The comparisons they're looking at are things like placebos, and then some of the outcomes around that, like quality of life, depression, different things like that. And that is a similar thing that you can use for your particular searches that you're carrying out. You can use the PICO technique to sort of like separate out the terms in that way. And we've got some resources available on the library research Moodle module that show you how to do that, and that's the sort of thing that we can assist you with further as well. Okay, so in terms of refining down that search, obviously you can use the filters, you can go back to your keywords and you can play around with those again, and you can add in terms, you can take out terms, you can give it more of a sets of limitations if there are particular things that you want in terms of population that you want to actually apply that to. If you want to add in more boxes, you can click on the plus and that will add in a separate box, and then you can type in something within there. So maybe if I put in something around adults, and then I can run the search again. Okay, and then I'll get my results back again, and you can see that's changed the results slightly within there. And then if I looking at the reviews here, if I click into the trials section, I can then see the trials as well that I can have access to and have a look at the data within those as well. So some really useful things within there that you can do. In terms of exporting any of the studies or the reviews that you want to have access to via Mendeley, if I click back into the reviews first just to give you an example. Okay, you can see each of the records has a tick box, so if I click on the top two within there, then you've got the option to export the selected citation. So if we click on that, and then the one we want to choose is the RIS reference manager, so I can click on that one, and then I probably might want to include the abstract to get that data across with the actual link, and then I can just click on download, and then that should then download those references into my download folder ready to upload into Mendeley as we did before with psych articles. Okay, and again I can do exactly the same with the trials. So let's just take the top two again. Okay, and that is done for you then. So let's just have a reminder of how we do that in Mendeley. So if we go back into our Mendeley desktop version and we go back, so we're in the clinical psychology folder, and then we go up to File, Add Files, and then we can do the two most recent ones. Open those up, and then all of those references will be within there, and you can see there from clicking on them I get the abstract, I get all the author keywords, I get all of the key sort of referencing information that I'm going to need within those to do some referencing when we get to that stage within there. So it's really as simple as that in terms of carrying out those searches across those databases and then getting the information into your reference management system. Okay, so the final source we're going to have a look at for searching for information and exporting that into Mendeley is Google Scholar. So I'm sure this is a tool that everybody uses quite frequently. Just a few sort of like tips that are slightly different to the things that we've looked at. When you're using Google Scholar, please make sure that you go up to the menu and check that you have linked to University of Kent. That will then give you access to all the things that you should have access to that we subscribe to. So to do that, you click on Settings, and then in Library Links you want to make sure you've got University of Kent. If you don't have that, you just need to type University of Kent, search for it, and then tick the box and save the settings, and that will then ensure that anything that you find that we do subscribe to, it will give you that direct link. Okay, so let's run a very similar search then. Let's do a search for that placebo effect. And again, we may want to do that as a phrase. You could also do placebo effect experiments or placebo effect studies, in terms of, again, thinking about what it was, what the sort of information you want to find out in terms of the format, the sort of data that may be within those. And then we can put exercise and mood as an initial one, and we keep it selected to articles, and we will run our search. Okay, and then you'll get the results back. So any that we have full text access to, there will be a link here, University of Kent. Now some you might find there isn't a link, but there is a PDF, and obviously it's fine to have a look at that. Just bear in mind that may not be the final version, so the final version may have had changes to it, the references may have been updated. So the ones that are kind of author versioned are the ones where you've got the University of Kent link within there, and that's how you would link to it. Rather than clicking on the title here, you'd click on the link there. Now you'll notice in Google Scholar that there are some filters, but they're not as sophisticated as the filters we've seen in the other databases, but you can still do things like limit it via the date range. Within there you can create alerts, and a search alert in the same way that we looked at that within psych articles. So it's just a case of clicking on the create alert, giving it a name, putting in the email address, and then clicking on the create alert that you want to then create that alert with. Okay, now a couple of other things I wanted to point out in Google Scholar, as well as when you're searching for articles in different databases, you might have a look at the list of references to find some other sources. What you can do within Google Scholar and some of the other databases is to find citation searches. So under each of these articles you can see it's got a link that says cited by. So what this means is this will show you all of the people that have actually cited this, so used this for their research. So this research was carried out in 2013, so anything previous to 2013 might be picked up by the cited by. So if I click on the cited by link, I can then see a list of all of the other articles or book titles or research that's been carried out, and also again you'll get the links to wherever we have full text of the article. So that's a really useful way for finding further resources, particularly if it's a more specialist area or a newer area of research, and you can keep on doing that. You can keep on drilling down, so you can select that one and then look at if anybody's cited that one subsequently, and then see who they are. So there are different ways of actually finding more information out initially from just using search terms, but you can also do your citation searching as well. The other really nice little useful feature in Google Scholar as well to be aware of is underneath each of the articles that list the authors. Now any of the authors that have their names underlined means that they have an actual Google Scholar profile. So if you click on their name, it will then give you their affiliation, so where they're based, and it will give you a list of their other publications. And quite often they'll have a research focus interest area, so more often than not you will find other sorts of articles or other papers, maybe other authors they've worked with as well. So again, another way of finding out more information on that sort of topic area. Now in terms of accessing and sending these different references into your Mendeley account, it's a slightly different process. So again, you need to, if you haven't already, create sort of a little personal profile with Google Scholar. If you have Gmail, you can use your Gmail account, or you can set it up with a completely different email address, but you will need to do that. And once you've done that, to save the articles you're interested in, you just click on the little stars next to them within here. Then once you've done that, you go up to the area where it says My Library, and then you'll see your list. So if I just click the top two here, and then I've got this export option with a little arrow. So the one that I want to option is RefMan is what I need for this option. So it's short for reference management, and I will click on that one. And again, it will download it exactly in the same way as it did before. So if we go into Mendeley now, I can go to my file, add files, and then it should be this most recent one that we've downloaded here. Open that up, and again that will add those within there. Okay, just to mention that it's kind of sometimes it will look to see if you've got any duplicates within there, because if you're exporting information from lots of different places, sometimes you might pick up more than one article in more than one place. So you might want to have a look at that. So for example, if you go down to tools, you can check for duplicates, and it will just check that you haven't got any duplicates there. And if it has, it will sort of merge those records together so that you only have the one sort of record for that. So that's quite a handy thing to do. Don't forget to keep syncing this as you go through, particularly if you're working from the web version and then go into the desktop version, just to make sure you're keeping the two up to date as much as possible. Okay. Okay, so hopefully those few demonstrations have been useful, giving you an idea of how you can carry out those searches and then save them into Mendeley. So what I'd like you to do now, and kind of in preparation for when we have the Q&A session, is just to have a go. So maybe try using Library Search to do some searches, but also have a look at things like maybe CINAHL or Psych articles or Google Scholar, and have a look to see how many sorts of resources you can find within there, and then also have a go at then exporting them into your Mendeley account once you've set that up as well. And if you've got any questions around any of that, please feel free to sort of keep those for when we have the Q&A session. Okay, so now we're going to carry on with the managing references side of the session. So we've already sort of set up our Mendeley account, and we've been having a look at how we can get those references from the different databases into Mendeley. But the next stage of that will be once you've got all your references in there and you're ready to do your write-up with your final sorts of submissions, and that's when you'll be wanting to you know, include your references within the text and create your bibliographies. Okay, and there's some really nice little tools within Mendeley that will help you to do that, working with Word or alternative word processing programs that you might be using. Okay, so to start inserting your bibliography and getting your references into your final submissions, there's a couple of things that you need to do in Mendeley first. So one of the first things you need to do is, if you go up to the Tools option, you'll need to install the MS Word plugin. So you can see there mine says uninstall because I already have it installed within Word, but yours will have install. So just click on that and that will install the little plugin within your Word processing program for you to use. That's the first thing. The second thing that we need to do if we go into View is to check the citation style. So this is the style, you know, the referencing style that you want your references to be produced in. So just make sure that you've got it in the relevant one. So I've already got this set up for the American Psychological Association 7th edition, but if it's the 6th edition, then you can easily change that to the 6th edition or set that. So just check that with your supervisor before you go ahead and do that. But that will ensure that you have them in the right referencing style. So they're the two things you need to do first. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just to demonstrate how this works. So I'm just going to go open up my a Word document. Okay, so we're in Word now, and once you've installed the actual Mendeley plugin, you should find that within just click in here, yeah, within the references tab here, and you see I've got this insert citation section within here. I can also open Mendeley, and I've also got the style selected here as APA, but if you've set it already in Mendeley, it should automatically pull that through. So if I click on insert citation, I'll get a little box pop up here, and then all I need to do is to start typing one of the authors or one of the titles or the year from one of the references, and it will automatically search the library within this interface. If you can't remember what they are, you can actually go to Mendeley and you can do it that way, and select the references from the Mendeley desktop itself as well. It's entirely up to you. At the moment I've got it selected from my library, so you just need to make sure that that's all up to date, and then all I need to do within here, sorry, I'll just do that again a second, is just to start to search. So if I just put within here, there I can see I've just started to put in a couple of the words, and some of the terms have come up within there. I could also put, for example, in another one, and it will start to give you things. So it looks for the keywords. I start to put in depression, and then you can select the relevant one. So you select it there, and then it's just a case of clicking in OK, and it will just put in that it's formatting the citation within there. And then you would continue typing away, and then you might want to put in a separate one. So let's put another insert citation, and let's look for something that's talking about mood. So let's say the mind body therapy one. And then again, we might want to insert another citation within here. So let's say within there, the placebo effect, and add that in. So for example, say that's it, you've finished your write-up, you've included all the in-text citations that you want to include. It's then a case of inserting the bibliography. So all you need to do then is click on your insert bibliography, and then that will list it below there in the relevant format. So you can see it takes a lot of that manual work out for you in terms of putting together your references. I will say it's not a magic wand, so if there were any inaccuracies with any of those references, so say for example when the data had come across into Mendeley there'd been 2 full stops instead of 1, for example, it will pull across it exactly as it is. It's not sophisticated enough to know that's incorrect. So you do need to have a good grip on how the reference management system you're using should look, so at least then you can have a scan through and say, yep, that looks how it should look, for example. And also you might need to put information in there like the date that you've accessed things on, additional things like that you can update exactly in that way. But it is really will take a lot of that kind of legwork out for you in terms of doing all of those references manually, and in some ways probably will make it a lot more accurate because there'll be less reliance on sort of human error, if you like. Okay, so hopefully that was useful in terms of finding information through those relevant databases and getting the information into Mendeley and creating your reference lists and in-text citations. You might want to know where else you can look additionally if you still need to find out some information. So there are a few links here that you might want to go on and have a look at. So for example, if you're looking for information that's been made available open access, and there's quite a movement here for the research to be made wider for people that are not necessarily studying at an institution that has access to these resources, and also it can be a good way of finding things that maybe we don't have in our subscription. So there's a link there to open access resources and some different tools that you can use to try and run some searches and identify some of that content. Other libraries, so currently other libraries haven't really been open for students to access their physical resources, obviously because of the pandemic, but hopefully from mid-November some of those libraries will be opening their doors again to students from other institutions. So have a little look at the guide, and that will give you some more information about how you go about that process. And then in terms of things that we don't have in our subscriptions and that you haven't been able to find via the open access route, there is document delivery. So you can make a document delivery request via library search and choose whether it's either an article or a book, fill out the information, and then you can request the information that way. Just a kind of final sort of closing up sort of reminders in terms of actually carrying out the searches. It's always better to start off broader. So start with your library search, then move into your subject databases like CINAHL and Cochrane, etc. Don't forget you've got the subject guide there for psychology that you can always revisit to give yourself a reminder of some of those other sources as well. And also the digital resources directory. You can type in psychology and that will show you all of those related resources. If you're looking for more general resources, so things like theses and dissertations, there will be some resources there, and again they will be listed on the subject guide. Other libraries, open access, your Google Scholar searches, again remember some of those different techniques such as the citation searching and making sure that you switch it on to show that you're affiliated to the University of Kent. And then the kind of final last port of call would be document delivery if you haven't managed to find the things you need via all of those other routes. I would also say please do get in touch with me as well. If there's something that you can't find or you're not sure about, drop me an email. I'll be very happy to help you and assist you just to make sure that it's not actually located in a database that you haven't thought about. And then just some sort of final reminders in terms of things to think about when you're carrying out your searches. All of the databases will have a help provided, so if you're not sure about what are the search techniques or how does this one search, just have a look at the help and it will show you how to do that. always try to use the advanced search rather than your basic search, because it will help you sort of explore that search more effectively. Remember, you can set up search alerts. You can't do it in library search, unfortunately, but in all the separate databases such as Google Scholar and the psyc info and CINAHL, you can set up those alerts and keep yourself updated on any new sources that get added based on your search criteria. And always record what and where you've searched. So have a go at setting up a Mendeley account, and make sure that you keep track of all those references right at the start, so that you don't have to go back retrospectively and sort of like remember where you found things. And most importantly, really be systematic about that, with the relevant referencing style that's been recommended that you use. I mentioned earlier on that we've got a Library Skills Moodle module, so everybody should be registered on that. So if you just look for DP23000 in Moodle, that will give you a link to the Moodle module. Lots more information on there. It's very interactive, so there are tutorials and videos to watch. It will cover everything I have, plus lots of extra additional things as well. Yeah, go and have a look at that as well. That's there as a supporting tool for you to make use of. And don't forget, get back in touch. My email address is there. You can book appointments with me either face-to-face or via Teams if you need that support. There's links there to the library web pages, and we also have colleagues working on the library and IT support desk too in the Templeman. So if you've got more general queries, don't forget to go and ask them. They're very very friendly and very knowledgeable in all sorts of library related areas. Okay, so that's the end of this recording now. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you managed to try out some of these techniques successfully. And don't forget to save all your questions for the Q&A session. Okay, thanks very much.